it's really important to use knowledge as the foundation first, because anything you build as far as AI, any automations, if you don't have the proper knowledge, you're just going to keep getting bad outputs and blame the AI when realistically it's just the foundation.
Well, hey, welcome to the Amanda Kaufman Show. And I am so excited about this episode because I sent a cold DM to not a stranger, but someone that I worked with years ago who is a genius, just certifiable genius. So Bailey Proulx is a marketing operations and automations and AI systems thinking, like I said, total genius. He helped me years ago with finally understanding good ways to do Facebook ads testing. That was my first introduction to him. And I remember when I saw him, he did a presentation in a mastermind that I was in, and he went only about 120 miles per minute. I ran out of ink in my pen and I was like, thank goodness I'm secretly recording this thing. He's one of the few people that I've heard speak where I not only revisited the recording, I slowed it down so I could take notes and break it down for my team. And it was so impactful what I learned from Bailey in about an hour of his time. I was like, wow. So I've been watching him ever since on the good old Facebook, and I noticed he's been doing a lot of lives lately on a topic that is such a huge buzz. And if there's one person in the whole wide world that I trust to have a very informed opinion about this, it's Bailey. We're going to talk today about AI and your business. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've also really tried to slow down my talking speed. So I think I've gotten better with that over the years, but we'll give that the good old test today.
Yeah, you know what? I think when you speak, you want us to understand all the pieces that we have to know. And, you know, it just means you got to talk fast. But yeah, I love it. So
my mouth's trying to keep up with my brain.
And so you're working in AI. You've built a new company fairly recently, it looks like, of Operion.io, right? And correct. I noticed, I really caught, like, you're doing a lot of live streams, you're doing a lot of education content on AI. But I just want to ask on a personal note, what told you to go pursue this next?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's actually kind of a series of things. So I was in the agency for, I guess, 5 years at that point. And one thing that we realized in the agency was that as we were actually helping clients, sometimes the clients would be better or worse off in that situation. So what I ended up discovering, it took me some time to think about it, on the marketing side, as we would help clients grow and hit their goals, they would go through a lot of operational struggles. So they would overhire, they wouldn't have the proper training process, the proper documentation, like any of the systems. So things would break, a bunch of holes would end up, happening inside their business. And then they would end up worse off because once you get to that point, you have to kind of tear things down in order to build them back up. And so about a year and a half ago, I got in an accident, had some time to step away, couldn't work for a couple months. And I was like, where could I help impact businesses the most if it's not just in marketing? We have marketing dialed in, the company's good there. As I had that accident, the team took over the company. They were doing fine. They were doing better off than when I was in there. So I was like, cool, you guys got this under control. I'm gonna go find a different way to help our clients. And that didn't necessarily start with AI, and I wouldn't even say it's just AI right now too. It's more of one of the tools that we use. But that brought me down the operational path. I have a lot of background in operations too, because I was in a company that we took from 0 to 60 million in 4 years. I was the right-hand man to the owner. I got to see all these different things happening. And as I was looking back through what happened with our clients, I realized, oh, these are the same patterns that are happening over and over and over again. So I built a lot of the systems, pretty much all of them internally in the agency too. I like building. So I like building and solving problems. So as I was going through that, I was trying to find a way that we could help our clients with that. At least initially, it wasn't even going to be a different brand. It was just going to be another offer that we had internally. But as I started to go down this path, that led me through a lot of the intelligent automations, AI. I have a little bit of a background in software engineering too. So I can conceptually understand a lot of these flows and variables and all the technical stuff that I'm not going to get into today, but I was able to conceptualize that. And then that just kind of brought me down the rabbit hole of all things, AI, automation, even just operations in general, which I think I have a very different take on it. Because I have the operational background and problem solving that I go through, it's not like going through the shiny objects. It's not just approaching, here's this symptom that you're experiencing. It's a lot deeper. So I started to go through that, and I realized pretty quickly, okay, we actually need our own brand for this because there's so much different value and positioning that we could have in this company.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I actually didn't even launch the company for about 7 months after like taking on clients on the side just to like test out, hey, am I like missing something here, or am I just not missing something? But when we were working with people, I'm like, is what I think is going to work actually going to work? And I don't like to go and like use clients' money to figure that stuff out. So we, cut them some deals. They were people that I knew, and the results were great with that. And I was like, okay, I think we're actually onto something here. And then that sparked
That's such a great lesson right there of like, hey, I've got this idea. I've got this hypothesis of something that I think would really help another person. And I love that you did that, that you were finding, people that were, I call them champions, people that you already have a good rapport with, a good relationship with, a little bit more relational safety just in case it doesn't quite go to what you think, because it was a hypothesis. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they knew what they were getting into too. I think a lot of them, I've been very lucky with a lot of relationships and just my journey in general. I think a lot of them really bought into like, hey, this is you doing it. I trust you. I like the way you think. So even if this isn't proven, I'm willing to pay you guys to do it. We were giving it to them basically at cost. So it was less risk to them, but I was able to test those theories because there's people I've been able to do those with before, even on the media buying side and marketing side. So I think I was blessed in that aspect of people believing in me to be able to go and test these. And then again, results were better than I thought they would be, which was great. And that's kind of what sparked that. We should probably create a business around this because a lot of people need this.
That's so good. That's so good. And just what is your business? Like, what is the core thing that you do? I know AI features into it pretty heavily because that's what I noticed in your content. But just like in general, if you're working with someone, just so that the listener understands, what is the scope? What is it that you exactly help people with?
Yeah, so I guess the easiest way to describe it is we help solve constraints in people's businesses. So I guess let me lay some foundation here, symptoms versus core constraints. So in business, people experience a lot of symptoms. And the symptoms are like the thing that you can see, like the thing that you think about, like, hey, I'm having bad hires. Hey, this department's starting to struggle. This KPI is being missed. And so the natural reaction for business owners is, hey, I see a problem. Let me go and solve that problem. And what you end up solving is a symptom. So when you're solving these symptoms, you might solve it temporarily. You have extra business resources that go there, extra attention. The team's going to follow your direction. You fix it, another thing pops up. You go and fix that. And then what ends up happening is you just play whack-a-mole with things happening in the business, thinking you're being busy by solving things, but nothing's actually changing. You're just becoming a professional firefighter. Then what ends up happening is when you go and solve these, if you don't get to the core constraint, you end up adding actually more complication to it because you're adding more manual processes and steps to that. So when you actually do go try to solve it again, it's more complicated. It's more complicated. It's more complicated. Yeah. So when we come into businesses, first thing we do is identify that core constraint. So core constraint meaning if you take these groups of symptoms, they usually come down to like a set of constraints. It's either like a data and automation thing, a knowledge syndication, or like the founder being stuck in a lot of the business decisions and not being able to syndicate that knowledge. So when we come in, we basically look at all the problems a business is experiencing, try to find the core constraint, and then essentially solve that core constraint. And so that piece is, I guess, really where the AI piece comes in, where we don't just do AI, but we take a look, cool, here's a core constraint, here's the symptoms, let's solve the core constraint first, and then you can essentially branch off solutions into those symptoms to fix it. So it's not like just solving the core constraint fixes the core constraint. It's the foundation to build on top of to then go and solve the symptoms to actually be able to solve them. So with that, obviously AI is a big part of that. Automations is a big part of that, even build outs of, CRMs, things like that. But yeah, really AI is one of the tools to be able to go and do that. But we come in, we solve core constraints in a business, we solve their symptoms and help them grow. So they stop running into roadblocks that they are usually too close to see. Right? When you're that close to the business, it's really hard to zoom out and see those things, and even hard to accept. Like, it doesn't happen to me. This is like a unique situation. And while I will say that,
like syndrome.
yeah, and like the things that people run into, they think they're unique, and they are unique, but they come from the same place. So yes, it might manifest differently, but it's really the same core constraints that people run into. So anyways, we come in an outside perspective, help identify the core constraints, and then figure out the best solution to solve those core constraints, the symptoms, to help unlock the business for growth.
I love it. I love it. So you may not know this about me, Bailey, but I was a strategy consultant and an operations consultant for about a decade before I became an entrepreneur. And I did it with one of the biggest consulting firms in the world. And
Nice.
the
Okay,
definition of strategy, and you're doing strategy, dude, right? So the definition of strategy that they taught us was it's the decision making we make about the resources that we have to get the best possible outcome.
I like that.
In a nutshell. I thought you might like that to steal it, right? I didn't say that. I wasn't the first one, but I think it was probably a Peter Drucker quote or something like that. But,
yeah.
You know, you're so right. Like, how many business owners have you met? How many have I met where they blame themselves, right? They often blame themselves. And it's like almost like the dark side of radical responsibility that most entrepreneurs and founders take is they're like, I'm responsible for everything. And it's like, yes. And you are building a system. And, you know, so often conflating that identity with the system. Now, that's where when I'm doing like human performance and high performance coaching is really to help people reclaim agency and stop that self-blame cycle so that they can make a new decision with the resources that they have so they get a better outcome. You know, I think I was in business for 15 years before anybody ever taught me constraint theory. Because so often we're taught silos and pieces of the business. And a lot of business owners, like they're technicians, like they're technically good. Like that's what started my business. I was an amazing coach, really good coach. That does not make me a good business owner, right? Yep. And you know, I'm blessed to say like you helped me break my business as well, right? With having like more traffic going through on the marketing side. But that's such a blessing too. Like when you do finally realize like the problem isn't necessarily the symptom, you know, like if I take another aspirin, sure, it might suppress the pain for a little while, but is it resolving the real source of the headaches, right? And that really is the game of business, isn't it?
It really is a game of business. Yeah. And I think that even thinking, you mentioned something here about responsibility and systems. I think a good like frame that helped me a lot was think about business as an ecosystem. And sometimes the way to solve a problem isn't the direct path to get there. So, hey, there's this thing I'm experiencing in the business that might be a system, but sometimes there's things you have to do either upstream or downstream, meaning the things that it affects or the things that affects it to get to the solution too. So being able to like break that down in my head of like, this is an ecosystem. I don't have to go and solve this in a silo, right? Or I don't have to treat each team like a silo, but if I can think about this as a chain of events that happens throughout the business for the thing the business is doing, that's really where it unlocks. So I think also thinking like that, where you break out of the silo and start to expand, which I think where AI can help a lot is breaking down paradigms and stop thinking about trying to solve, old problems with old tools, but knowing that we have new tools to our ability to break down that paradigm to be able to solve them with the new tools. I think that's hard because everyone's so used to doing things a certain way that when you have a chance to not do it that way, it's like a hard paradigm break. And so I think AI is becoming a lot more of the people that can think better are going to have the biggest separation. A lot of people think, hey, AI is going to take my job or it's going to make things easier. It's really not. AI just enables you to be able to bring a lot of your ideas to life. It really comes down to who's going to have the better ideas or be able to extract those better ideas. That's where I see the market right now.
So interesting, because if you think about that definition I gave of strategy, it's the resources we have, like is essentially accessible to everyone. Like it is so democratized as a tool. Whereas like even starting my business just 8 years ago, the barriers to entry were so much higher and mainly around like relevant information. Understanding, for example, the fundamentals of marketing, fine. But if you want to really perform at that higher level, it's more than doing marketing, right? Like you need to have a real strategy to, and everybody's getting the same tools. So I totally agree with you that it's how do you create? And how do you shift out of the consumption attitude and into the creator attitude? And are you creating something that is valuable, and that is going to be supported by the market and your collaborators and the other people are like, oh, that's cool. Like, I want to support that. That's going to help. That's going to be really amazing. Versus I think we're moving out of a stage where people would just be like, how do I buy the right software or turn on the right switches and then, print print my money. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So good. So Bailey, when somebody's like approaching, one of the reasons I reached directly out to you is so many people are talking about AI, and like from very advanced, very established entrepreneurs all the way down to the beginner entrepreneur. And they're all claiming I use AI. Right? Like if I just put the question out there, everybody's using AI. And they're using it pretty extensively in some cases, you know. I'm so curious your perspective on how are entrepreneurs adopting AI really? And is there an approach that would probably serve most people better? Because there's kind of like, I guess I'm falling back on on a bit of a philosophy that I've had for a while, which is if you want what everybody else has, do what everybody else does. And if everybody's approaching it one way, then everybody's going to get the same result. And then there's not really like that outlier, like we were talking about before, of being an outlier creator. What do you see as maybe a frame or a way of thinking or philosophy about how to apply AI in our business in a way that is really creating value and not maybe the new consumption tool du jour?
Yeah, I think,
I'm maybe leading the witness on that question, but
yeah,
do
I
with
get
it
what you're
what you
saying.
will.
Yeah, so I think how people are approaching AI is a good place to start because, how in my opinion you should approach AI is kind of on the inverse of that. What I see a lot of people doing is chasing the shiny object in the industry, meaning, hey, this new tool came out, this new, LLM model came out. Hey, I saw this person make this thing. And so they end up jumping around thinking that there's something that someone else is doing that they need to catch up on and they're always going to be behind. It's like jump around versus being able to dive deeper in something. Now, in my opinion, I think it's not quite an opinion. I think it's probably a fact, but in my opinion, the AI automation world is very much just a big sandbox. You just have so many Legos that you can choose from to get to the result that you want to get to. That no two solutions are the same, no two businesses are the same, and it's about impossible to say I want to go and learn AI. I'm going to go and Google it. Right? If you're looking for something, you're not going to be able to find it because there's so much stuff out there that you can do. You're not going to be able to find what you need because no one's going to have the same situation. So when I talk about approaching AI, there's a couple different layers to go through, but number one is always going through what we were also mentioning with the core constraint and symptoms, trying to identify your core constraints in the business that if this pretty much singular thing is unlocked, what other problems does it solve that really unlocks my business, right? So you're solving the problem that solves the problems. But if you can start to break down the paradigms on not just like trying to solve things with what you already know and the old tools that existed, and you come up with a solution, you can then work backwards off the solution to figure out how to get there. So it's actually reverse engineering from here's actually like perfect world scenario. If I could just have this happen, then all my problems would be solved. If you can work backwards and say, cool, how do I get there? Like what needs to happen? What has to be true to get there? Cool, let me go and research this. You'll find a bunch of new stuff that you didn't know about. Cool, now in order to do this, I need to do this previous step. And you end up just going backwards to get there to figure out, cool, this is where I need to start. But I think what a lot of people try to do is they go, I need to start here and then do this thing and then do this thing. And you end up somewhere completely off of what you should actually be solving in the business. But if you go backwards to then learn the things that need to be true that you'd have to implement in order to get there, to find your own path, your own Lego blocks. But every single software, low code, no code, any of those tools out there, they can be used in so many different ways. You're not going to learn anything trying to start somewhere and progress, but you have to move backwards because that's where you'll find a lot of stuff. Even for me, as I was going through everything, I learned the most amount of stuff going backwards. I have so many, like my team would tell me every day we talk, like, dude, every single day you're just learning so much new stuff. And it's not me trying to go and learn new stuff. It's just me trying to solve problems for us internally and for our clients. So I think approaching it that way to figure out these are the things I need to learn that create the reverse chain to get to the result. I think that's how people should be approaching it, right? But unfortunately, a lot of people see content. They say, cool, I like that video. I'm going to go and learn more about that. And then they try to figure out how am I going to use that tool in my business versus what do I need? Like, what do I need in my business to reverse engineer what tools you need in order to make that possible? So working backwards is really where it's unlocked. You can get ideas from content, but you shouldn't try to start there. You should just use those as an idea generation, a Lego block that you could be using to architect the solution that you need.
Well, and like to add further fuel to that assertion, that fire, when I very first started my business, that philosophy of backwards is actually how I did it. I was like, look, requirement, you need to replace corporate income ASAP. And what I was seeing everybody doing as they were kind of tiptoeing into the ocean of coaching is like, well, I'll go get the certification. Well, I'll charge like $50 an hour. And well, maybe someday I'll earn the right to charge more. And what I did is I just basically was like, cool, I'm $30,000 a year. And I started looking for $30,000, actually $1,000 problems to solve with people that they would, pay my fee and be like, that's money I've ever spent. Right? Like that's how I approached launching this business. And I would argue it's a really big reason that I'm here, but it was exactly that thinking. It wasn't like I'm going to someday earn the right or someday figure it out or someday wander my way into my goal. It was like, no, this is where we land. What's the best way to do that, with the resources I have today, right? So not to say it wasn't scary. It was absolutely terrifying. But so Bailey, like you've talked a lot about the constraint. And, if I'm talking to people kind of on these internet streets as fellow entrepreneurs, like at the end of the day, how do I make more money? How do I save more time or have more freedom? Because like, how many entrepreneurs got into this so that they could ultimately have freedom and then end up caged by their own business? How will this replace me? Like, these are the kinds of questions that people tend to reach out with. And I would say, like, especially with the speed up of the technology, more and more I'm hearing this lamentation of I'm falling behind, right? So these are the things I'm hearing every single day. So I'd love your reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I think falling behind is definitely like the technology is already so advanced. Unless you're already really deep in AI, that new technology coming out is not going to make a big impact for you. If anything, it's going to make it more complicated because the models are so much smarter now. As the model gets smarter and you don't have the proper documentation and training for it, you end up like having it hallucinate more, meaning it starts to like go off in la la land and not be able to create a consistent result. So I actually recommend people not go after the shiny stuff and just focus on one thing deeply. So for example, that whole Claude bot or whatever just came out a couple weeks ago, which is definitely up my alley, the more technical side of things. But I'm not even focusing on that. I have my own thing that I'm doing right now that I want to go deep on, that I have a clear understanding of how it works, how I'm creating a system around it to be able to actually build the solution that I want. I don't think falling behind, I actually think that's probably the worst place to go to because you're not going to be able to sit down and focus on one thing long enough. So I think focusing on here's like the core foundation that I want to set. And I think knowledge is the biggest piece of that. You mentioned getting out of your business. It's a big thing for founders, especially technical founders that said, hey, I'm really good at this thing. I want to go and start a business about it. Is like a pro and a con because you have a certain way of doing things. Like there's a certain way that you do it. It's hard to distill out of your head. So when you're training people, you have to teach them a lot more of the why. But a lot of people, as you scale, you teach them a lot of the what because you don't have time to teach them the why. And so like distilling that information out and using that is even a thing you can use AI for, of like, here's all of our processes that we do. An important thing, I think, just overall with AI is actually having a focus on extraction first. So even with the agency, as I started to move more out of the agency, we had all these different like things that we would do for different situations. And it was so hard to train people initially because it's like, yeah, you just have to do this thing because we've had the experience to be able to solve this before. So being able to extract the thinking and the philosophies and the approach to be able to get there was super important for us, where it's like, if we can teach people how to think, it doesn't matter what situation they're going to run into. I think it's a big thing with businesses.
That's
they're
such
technical.
gold right there. Yes.
Yeah. And so I think it's a huge thing, is how do you extract, right, the not just the what, but the why and the how. And if you can then teach that as you're onboarding people, and then you give them some sort of way to be able to like extract that knowledge and to learn, you're going to really unlock yourself. But again, a lot of people get stuck in the what, and then a problem happens. They go, I'm going to solve that with this thing. They don't get to like the core philosophy and the thinking behind it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a big thing, especially for founders. We can talk about like some systems that you can do to help extract that. But I think specifically for founders, technical founders, it's really important to use knowledge as the foundation first, because anything you build as far as AI, any automations, if you don't have the proper knowledge, you're just going to keep getting bad outputs and blame the AI, when realistically it's just the foundation that isn't set up properly, so you're not going to be able to get a consistent result, which has people lose trust in AI. Then they think that the new thing coming out is going to be the thing that solves a problem because the last model didn't do what it was supposed to do, so this new model might do that. Versus, let me just focus on one thing and really start to tune it and trust in it and then figure out the system.
I love that. What about for for people that are looking for a new opportunity? So I couldn't help but notice, you identified a new opportunity, you really had a big reflection moment about what you want to do next. And that's so powerful. There's a lot of people that are in my community, my audience, that maybe they've been an employee, or maybe they've worked in a more traditional business and now they're wanting to start like an expert based business, but they're not yet at the place where they can hire team. They're kind of a solopreneur. A massive advantage, I would imagine. But what would you suggest to someone who is maybe in this place where their constraint is they haven't started yet, they don't have any real world data?
Yeah, I mean, I think using AI to help spark those ideas is probably one of the most underutilized things. So people, in my opinion, again, go to AI and they want it to solve their problem. Meaning they're like, I give it this input, I get an output, and then that's the circle that you go through. Yeah. But realistically, I think the best way to go about it is, one, to use it to help spark ideas. And when I approach things like that, where I'm like, I don't really know what direction to go with this, I like to start really wide, meaning I want like the most diverse type of outputs that I can get, diverse type of ideas, and then start to like cherry pick things from those that I like to start to get better ideas. So it's a really good brainstorming piece too. So for example, let's say you're like, I'm really good at this thing, but I don't want to do a whole business around all these. You can start to like give inputs to say, cool, what are different avenues or business models I can create about this? You get an output and you're like, yeah, I like that part. I don't like that part. I don't like that part. You can start to combine those to start to get to the perfect solution that you're looking for, but strategically, purposely going wide and then starting to narrow in to essentially find what you're looking for. But again, I think people will just go to, I'm going to put this input in and then I'm going to get this output. And then if it doesn't work, I'm just going to keep like talking to it to try to get it right, versus being more strategic in the way they're trying to extract information and combine information with that. So, I mean, at least for us, when I was going through this for the Aperion side, we had the automation side, we could do the AI side. And when I was going through that, that's kind of essentially what I did. It was like, I can do all these things, but what essentially is going to have the biggest impact? Do I think I can build a team around? Do I think is the most duplicatable? That's one thing in the agency that we didn't have, which is we're so technical on the media buying side that it was really hard to duplicate that and really hard to hire for it and train for it. So I wanted something that we could have be a little more duplicatable and more consistent. So it's like all these different life experiences I was able to add in that, of things that I liked, that I didn't like in prior things. I was able to then start to feed into this to then get the idea of Aperion and what we focus on in the business. So I think another piece of that too is, just because you're good at something doesn't mean that that's something you have to do in business. A lot of people are good at a lot of things, but you don't have to do all those things. Like, you should go and pick the things in there that you want to do. So just because you can do something does not mean you should. My first agency, I had that. We were doing webinar build outs and and funnels and all this stuff. And I was like, that I can do those, right? But if I focus deeply on media buying, which I loved at the time from the technical aspect, we can get a better result. I can stay singularly focused. But moral of the story, just because you can doesn't mean you should. You should find what you love and then try to piece that with your life experiences to figure out, is this actually the business in 5 years that I'm going to still love? Or am I just trying to do a quick cash grab right now and then end up hating the business later? Because I think a lot of people go through that too. They build a business they don't like. They get to the end. They're like, I started this to get more time and now I'm busier than ever.
What game did I win, right? Like, and that was a huge motive for me to become an entrepreneur, as I did spend a decade working in a corporate consulting structure. And there were so many amazing things about that. And if I'd stayed on that path, I mean, I well could have, but it wasn't my joy, because I didn't get to, get scrappy with people, kind of boots on the ground with things the way that I love to do. You do really have to choose your joy. And I think the other piece of that is, find the resonance of the joy, right? Because I think sometimes we get a little stuck in like, I was valued in this organization for this particular talent, right? And the thing is that there's other talents that would be appreciated in other forums, but unless you explore for those forums, and that's something that AI can accelerate in a really big way, because it can help you identify, like, are there communities like this? Are there companies like this? Can you give me examples, right? And it can just, I was going to say shortcut, but really a more accurate word would be, it accelerates your exploration. You can accelerate your exploration of ideas. I love it. Okay, yeah. Bailey.
On that topic, real quick though, on the joy side, I think a good thing to do is there's so many different ways. Like, if you go to a conference, everyone makes money in different ways. Everyone tries to find the thing that they're going to make the most money with. But something that's easy to do with the business is you could say, this is what I love to do, right? What are different ways I can make money from this, right? And then you'll start to go wide and start to get ideas of all the different ways you can make money with it, right? You can go, cool, I like that one, I like that idea, I like that idea, and you can start to combine them. But now, before when we started, you had to be like, cool, I want to do this. How the heck do I go and do this? How the heck would I make money? Versus now being able to leverage that to have the ideas and the direction for the AI to help spark those ideas as well. But now you can make money from everything. You don't have to know how to do that out of the gate. It can help the ideation, the strategy. It can help with that whole process now, which is something I didn't have, starting. I had to figure out how to make all the money. So I think that's an important thing too, is build a business that you love, because now you truly can without trying to figure it out as you go. Because otherwise you'll end up 5 years down the road, not like the business and be like, why the heck did I start this anyway? So it should be a forethought, not an afterthought of for me in the agency, it was like, how do I love this? I didn't necessarily love it up front, but I was always trying to convince myself of why I loved it versus just building a business that I loved in the first place.
I love that so much. I'm so glad that you found something that is sparking some joy. Bailey, if people wanted to keep up with you, what's the best way to do that?
Probably Instagram would be the best bet, is Bailey, Bailey_Proulx.
Amazing. Amazing. And dear listener, we've got Bailey's links in the show notes below. Bailey, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on here. It was fun.
So fun. And dear listener, if you have been thinking about AI and talking about it with your friends, why don't you grab the link to this episode and text it on over or send them a DM. Share this episode, because we talked about a lot of really impactful ideas for established business owners and startup business owners to make great decisions using AI. So I'm sure you've got some friends that would really love to hear this episode. And by the way, don't sneak away without hitting the subscribe button. If you're like me, you might just listen and then wait for the next post, but it's better to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And finally, if you've been listening for a while and you love it, we would love a honest review. So if you just take 30 seconds to tell us what you think of the show, it really helps our new listeners decide whether they want to spend time with us or not. And we are always so grateful. We'll be back with another episode very soon. But until then, make sure you do what matters.